Tales from the Treehouse.
Hi, I'm Ben. Welcome to Tales from the Treehouse. I'm going to tell you a story, so make sure you're feeling nice and comfy. Make sure you're lying or sitting down, not too warm, not too cold, just feeling relaxed. To help, take a breath in and out. In for 3, 1, 2, 3. Out for 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. In for 3, 1, 2, 3. Out for 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Perfect. Soft, calm, and relaxed. This will help your imagination flow. This is a listening story, so that you can close your eyes if you like, and watch the pictures to go with the story just come into your mind. Imagine what all the characters look like for you, and walk through their world with them. Here we go. The Six Swans. A king was once hunting in a great wood, and he hunted the game is a word for things like deer and rabbits or whatever else you're hunting, so energetically that none of his courtiers were able to keep up with him. When evening came, he saw that he had lost his way and was quite alone. He sought a way out of the forest, but he couldn't find one. Then he saw an old woman with a shaking head coming towards him. "Good woman," he said to her, "can you show me the way out of the wood?"
"Oh, certainly, Sir King," she replied. "I can do that, but only on one condition. If you do not fulfill my request, you will never get out of the wood and will die of hunger."
"What is the condition?" asked the king.
"I have a daughter," said the old woman, "who is so beautiful that she has no equal in the world, and she is well worthy of being your wife. If you will make her your queen, I will show you how to get out of the wood."
The king was so worried about getting home that he said yes, all right, and the old woman, who was in fact a witch, led him to her little house, where her daughter was sitting by the fire. She greeted the king as if she'd been expecting him all along, and he saw that she was certainly beautiful. But somehow the girl did not please the king. He could not look at her without some secret feeling of horror. As soon as he had lifted the maiden onto his horse, the old woman showed him the way. Soon the king reached his palace, and the wedding was celebrated there. Now, the king had already been married once, and had 7 children by his first wife, 6 boys and 1 girl, whom he loved more than anything else in the world. Their mother had died several years before, but because he was afraid that their new stepmother might not treat them well, he put them all in a lonely castle that stood in the middle of a wood. It was so well hidden, and the way to it was so hard to find, that he himself could not have reached it had not a wise woman given him a spool of thread, which had this magic thing about it that when he threw it in front of him, it unwound itself and showed him the way. But the king went to visit his dear children so often that the queen became annoyed with him being away all the time. She grew more and more curious and decided to discover what he did on his own in the wood. So she gave his servants money, saying, "Here you are. Now tell me what the king gets up to." I don't know if we should do that, Your Majesty."
"Look, all this money, more than you get paid in a month. Come on, tell me."
Very well." So he goes into the wood to see his children. They live in a castle there.
"Really? How do I get there?"
It's really hard to find."
"Then how does he find his way?"
He has this spool of thread. Look in the little drawer next to his bed, and take it with you. When you get there, you throw it out on the floor in front of you. It will show you where to go." She found the spool of thread, and knowing where it was, she then made some other preparations. She made some little white shirts, and as she had learned from her mother the witch, she sewed a nasty little spell into each of them. Now one day, when the king was away, she took the little shirts and went into the wood, taking the spool with her. She threw it on the ground in front of her, and sure enough, it showed her the way. Now the boys, who lived in the castle, saw someone coming, and they thought it was their dear father come to see them, so they rushed out of the castle to meet him joyfully. And as they did, she threw a white shirt over each one, and as they fell over their heads, they changed all of them, all 6 of them, into swans, and they flew away over the forest. The queen went home quite satisfied with herself, and thought that she was well rid of her stepchildren, and now she would have all of her husband's attention for herself. But she knew nothing of the king's daughter, his last child, who was still inside the castle. She hadn't run out to meet her father that day. Now the next day the king went to visit his children and found no one but his daughter. "Where are your brothers?" he asked her.
"Oh, dear father," she answered, "they've gone away and left me all alone."
And she told him that, looking out of her window the day before, she'd seen all of her brothers flying over the wood in the shape of swans. The king mourned for his sons, and since he was afraid of losing his daughter as well, he decided to take her with him. But she was afraid of her stepmother, and begged the king to let her stay just one more night in the castle in the wood. The poor girl thought, "My home is no longer here. I have to go and seek my brothers." And when night came, she went deep into the forest. She walked all through the night and the next day, till weariness stopped her from going further. Then she saw a hut, went in, and found a room with 6 little beds. She crept under one of them and lay down on the hard floor. She was going to spend the night there. Just before sunset, she heard a rustling sound and saw 6 swans flying in through the window. They stood on the floor and blew all their feathers off, and then they stripped off their swan skins like shirts. Overjoyed to recognize her brothers, the girl crept out from under the bed, and her brothers were no less delighted to see their little sister again. But their joy did not last very long. "You cannot stay here," they said to her. "This is a den of robbers." "Could you not protect me?" asked the sister. "No," they answered. "For just a quarter of an hour after sunset, we get back our human forms. Any minute now we're going to change back into swans again." Then the little sister cried. She said, "Can you not be freed?" "Oh no," they said. "The conditions are too hard. Well, there is a way, but you, our dear sister, you wouldn't be able to speak or laugh for 6 years. And in that time, you'd have to make 6 shirts for us out of star flowers. If a single word comes out of your mouth, all your labour would be in vain, and we would still be under the spell." When the brothers had said this, the quarter of an hour came to an end, and they turned back into swans again and flew away out of the window. The maiden determined to free her brothers, even if it should cost her her life. She left the hut, went into the forest, climbed a tree, and spent the night there. The next morning she came down, collected star flowers, and returning to her tree, began to sew. She could speak to no one, and she had no wish to laugh, so she sat there, looking only at her work. When she'd lived there for some time, the king of another country was hunting in the forest, and his hunters saw this little girl sitting in the tree. They came over, and they called out to her and said, "Oi, who are you?" But she gave no answer. "Come down to us," they called. "We will do you no harm." She shook her head silently. As they pressed her further with questions, she threw them a golden chain from her neck, but they would not leave off, and she threw them her belt, and when this was no use, her garters, they're the elastic bits that hold up your stockings, and then her dress. Now the story doesn't tell us what she was wearing after that. I hope she had some underwear on. Anyway, the huntsman would still not leave her alone, but climbed the tree, lifted the maiden down, and led her to the king. The king, he didn't say, "What are you doing there with just your underwear on?" No, that doesn't get mentioned. He just said, "Why are you in that tree?" But she answered nothing. He asked her in all the languages he knew, but she was just as silent as a fish. Because she was so beautiful, however, the king's heart was touched, and he was overcome with a great love for her. So, to protect her modesty, he wrapped her up in his cloak, placed her before him on his horse, and brought her to his castle. There he had her dressed in rich clothes, but not a word could be drawn from her. But her quiet ways and behaviour pleased him so much that he said, "I will marry this maiden, and no other in the world. And after some days he did marry her. Now the king had a wicked mother, who was displeased with the marriage, and said terrible things of the young queen. "This girl is not worthy of a king," she said. After a year, when the queen had her first child, the old mother took it away from her, and told the king that the queen had killed their baby. The king could not believe it, and would not allow any harm to be done to her, and his wife sat quietly sewing at the shirts, apparently not troubling herself about anything. The next time she had a child, the wicked mother did the same thing, but the king would not believe her. He said, "My queen is too sweet and too good to do that." But when the third child was taken away, and his wife was again accused, and could not utter a word in her own defence, the king was obliged to hand her over to the law, which decreed that she should be burnt to death. The day on which the sentence was to be carried out was the last day of the 6 years in which she could not speak or laugh. The 6 shirts were done, except for the left sleeve of the last one. As she was being led to the stake, the queen laid the shirts on her arm, and when she stood on the pile of sticks and the fire was about to be lit, she looked around her and saw 6 swans flying through the air. Then she knew that her release was at hand, and that she could free her dear brothers from enchantment. Her heart danced for joy. The swans fluttered around her and hovered so low that she could throw the shirts over them. The swan skins fell off, and her brothers stood before her, living, well, and handsome. Only the youngest had a swan's wing instead of his left arm, because his shirt sleeve had not been finished. They hugged each other and kissed each other, and the queen went to the king, who was standing by with his mouth open in astonishment. She said, "Dearest husband, now I can speak and tell you that I am innocent and have been falsely accused." She told him of his old mother's deceit, and how she had taken the 3 children away and hidden them. Then the children were fetched, to the great joy of the king, but the wicked old woman came to no good end. And the king and the queen, their children and her brothers, lived for many years in happiness and peace. And that's the end of my tale, as I heard it said, and if there's a fib in it, I'm off home to bed. Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed the story today. There will be another one soon, so please subscribe to our YouTube channel or our blog, so you get a message when the next one is ready. If you'd like to draw a picture of a scene you imagined from the story today, then I'd love to put it on our video here or on our website for other children to see. Please take a photo of your picture and email it to us at info@treehousetheatre.com. I was Ben all this time. Until next time, cheerio.
Tales from the Treehouse.